Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Temple Bethel at Boca Raton. My name is Rabbi Greg Weissman. I want to thank those of you who are here in the chapel with us today. For those of you who are joining us virtually, you can't see that this room is pretty much full. There are a spare seat here and there, but folks continue to make their way in. We are here today. We shouldn't have to be here today. Let's be honest. Talking to many of you as you were coming in this morning, some of you who were of a generation a bit before mine said, we already did this. We already had these conversations. We already did this work. And we find ourselves here in 2023 needing to talk about reproductive rights again in the state of Florida. Because for the last couple of years, the legislature and the powers that be in Tallahassee have decided that what was freedom is no longer free. That what is the right thing to do is no longer the thing to do. We noted in the last couple of years, a state like ours, which used to be, for decades, a place where someone who needed the medical care of the termination of a pregnancy or help while they were going through difficulties could come to Florida from our neighboring states, from Alabama, from Mississippi, from Georgia. They would come to Florida because they knew in Florida they could get the care that they needed. And in the last 2 years, access to that care was restricted to 15 weeks. And then, I can't believe I'm going to say this, to 6 weeks. Those of you who've experienced pregnancy, either as a person who is carrying a child or the partner of one, knows that at 6 weeks, you don't even know that you're pregnant yet. So a 6-week ban is essentially a total ban. We're going to hear today from a few voices. We're going to hear from my colleague, Rabbi Alana Rabashaw, who's going to share with us a little bit about how the Jewish tradition has thought about abortion access over the thousands of years of our history. And it's important that we hear that voice because we know that for so many people, the conversation is framed as the need to respect religion. Well, guess what? We are religious folks too. And our religion tells us that the right to access to an abortion is an essential religious right. We're going to hear from members of our congregation, including Heather Ayres and Susan Stallone, members of our professional team, and Jan Fine and Joanna Sackle, who have spent hours and hours and hours and hours preparing for this morning and gearing us up for months and months and months of a campaign, which we hope will end at the end of 2023 with this issue being on the ballot for the vote in 2024. So that come November 2024, we can all cast a ballot to say that in the state of Florida, abortion rights are the law. That's the goal that we are all working for today. And we'll hear more this morning about what we need to do both individually and as a community to bring that to fruition. We are also going to hear, and this is going to be the powerful portion of the day, we are going to hear from 5 different members of our community who each have a personal story about their experience in and around abortion access, whether they had experience it themselves or help folks. And you're going to hear why this law is so terrible and why access to abortion is so essential. It is not just the right of a person who has an unwanted pregnancy to terminate that pregnancy early in term. It is also the medical care that pregnant people need as they're making their way through their pregnancy. It is also the people who desperately want to have a child, but the fetus that they're carrying is a threat to their life and their well-being. Those are the stories that we're going to hear this morning. I want to thank everyone for being here today. I want to thank all of you who've joined us online. I know many of you reached out to me and said, I want to be there, but I can't. I said, don't worry. We're going to live stream it. We're going to record it. Those of you who registered to be here today, which I'm looking around the room, I think is most of you, we now have your email address. And so you'll be getting from us tomorrow morning an email with all of the resources we're going to discuss today, how to get access to the petition, where to return it, and a recording of today's program for you to watch over and over and over again, for you to share with folks. Everybody in Florida needs to hear this message. We're going to begin this morning hearing from the president of Temple Bethel, Wendy Whalen.
Thank you, and good morning. I have been passionate about this issue for many, many years, and I could go on and on, but I decided I just wanted to share with you one story. In 1970, abortion was legalized in New York. In the following 2 years, 2/3 of the abortions performed in New York were on patients who had traveled from other states. Many were young women with little income who scraped together funds to travel to New York and pay for their abortion. Many were scared and never had been to New York before. I know this because in the summer of 1972, I worked in an abortion clinic in New York. I was only 16. Yes, already an advocate for women's rights. And my father often drove me from our home in New Jersey to my job in Manhattan. I usually took public transportation home, but not always alone. There were times when I took one of these young women, sometimes a teenager, home with me. They had no idea where to stay, and they were going to sleep alone either at the airport or at a bus station until the next morning when they were able to return home. My family was able to provide a safe home, a safe bed, and a good meal for their overnight stay. And I was thrilled when Roe v. Wade was passed the following year. And I am here today because, like so many of you, I am horrified that women's rights and freedom of choice have been taken away. Thank you.
My name is Rabbi Alana Rabishaw, and I am horrified to be here. However, there is something that is giving me a little bit of hope, and that is the handful of teenagers I see around this room. I hope that in 18 months, you will never have to sit in a room like this again. Judaism has a plethora of resources and has been having this conversation since the beginning of time. And to illustrate that, Rabbi Dan Levin, who unfortunately could not be here today, sent me a PowerPoint with about 50 slides worth of resources. I was told that I had about 5 minutes, so I distilled it down. Starting with the book of Genesis, might as well start at the very beginning. Chapter 5, all humans were created in the image of God. Forno, a 16th century rabbi, teaches that this verse of Torah is a reference to free will, and in this respect, having free will, humans are like God. Rabbi Steinsaltz from the 20th century teaches that we were granted this divine soul in a human body, and as we choose right from wrong, humans can elevate towards holiness, justifying the emanation of this world. Because without free will, what's the point of this world existing? There is a famous story in the book of Exodus about two men who are fighting, and one of whom injures a pregnant woman, resulting in her miscarriage. The verse then explains that if only harm is done in the miscarriage, the perpetrator must pay a fine. However, if the pregnant person is gravely injured, the penalty shall be for a life as in other homicides. The common rabbinic interpretation of this verse is that the men did not commit murder and the fetus was not a person. The primary concern in this verse is that the well-being is for the woman who is pregnant. In the Mishnah, which was redacted in 200 CE, the rabbis discussed that if a woman has more than the usual difficulty in childbirth, the embryo within her should be dismembered limb by limb because her life takes precedence over its life. Once its head or its greater part has emerged, it may not be touched. That is when life begins. In the Talmud, around the 5th century, Rav Hizda raised an objection to Rav Huna from a piece of the text. and said, if a woman was giving birth and her life was being endangered by the fetus, the life of the fetus may be sacrificed in order to save the mother. But again, once its head emerged during the birthing process, it may not be harmed in order to save the mother, because one life may not be pushed aside to save another. Again, life begins at birth. If one is permitted to save the pursued party by killing the one who has pursued him, why is this so? And the answer is that until the baby is born, the fetus is pursuing to endanger the woman's life. Tzitz Eliezer, which comes from an Orthodox rabbi in the 20th century, Rabbi Eliezer Waldenberg, says, if there is a danger to the mother from continuing the pregnancy, one should permit abortion without hesitation. Also, if her health is poor and to cure her or not relieve her from great pain, it is necessary to abort the fetus, even if she is not in actual danger. There is room to permit this based on the halachic authority and how they have had this conversation for the last 1,000 years. And finally, Levushai Mordechai, who is also a 20th century Orthodox rabbi, equates mental health to physical health. So if a woman is not mentally fit to be carrying a baby for one reason or another, she should be able, or the person carrying the baby should be able to abort without hesitation. Thank you so much.
Hello. It really is good seeing so many people out there. I was 21 years old, and today that seems very young. And I, about a year later, planned a pregnancy with my husband. I was obviously not very good in math because when I got pregnant immediately, it turned out I was due the day he took the bar exam. So that wasn't a great idea. Pregnancy was pretty decent, things didn't smell good, little kinds of things. Getting into my 6th month, the fetus died. Because of the uterus being soft, nothing could be done, and I carried the fetus 6 to 8 weeks before they could do a D&C, which is what they were able to do. About a year later, I got pregnant again, and before my 6 weeks, I was terribly sick. I was 121 pounds. I went into the hospital. They gave me glucose. I ended up going down to 98 pounds. My daughter was a real survivor, and she was my middle pregnancy, and she is today a wonderful young woman. I got pregnant again for my last pregnancy, and the doctor I had left town. He went to California, and I went to a doctor who was supposed to be a specialist. Well, I didn't feel real well, but he wouldn't see me, told me to eat crackers, and it turned out that I had toxemia, serious toxemia. I go into the hospital. They had tried a few things, nothing worked, and they said I needed to have an abortion. Now, I lived in Maryland at the time, and at that time, you just had to talk to a psychiatrist to get an abortion. Fortunately, our family knew a really nice man, and he came and he was very gentle with me. I would have told him they could cut my head off. I was feeling so poorly. But I said, absolutely, I would be satisfied to have an abortion. Now, let me just summarize this. My first pregnancy, the way things are today and the way doctors handle things, I'm not sure if they would have done a D&C, if they would have waited till I had sepsis or something else. So I don't know, frankly, if I would have lived. My second pregnancy, I hope they would have treated me in the hospital and I could have somehow gotten through it. My third pregnancy, I would have died. And there is no doubt in my mind from everything I've read and everything I've seen. So if I was lucky enough to have my daughter to get through my first and second pregnancies, she would have been here, which would be wonderful. But I would not have seen her grow. I would have not have seen my 2 granddaughters. And what's happening today is truly heartbreaking for me. I'm very glad to have been here. I'm glad that I was lucky enough to have good care, or at least care enough to keep me alive. I hope that we can do the same for those that we care about and those we don't know that are important to this world. Thank you.
There is no question that if we take the Torah that Rabbi Rabashah taught us and applied it to the situation that Ellen just described that she was in, that the right thing to do is to give the medical care, to take care of a pregnant person that would be so desperately necessary in this moment. So thank you, Ellen, for sharing that story. There are too many people in this room to invite everyone who has something to say to come up to say, and there are a few more people that we're going to hear from. But each of you have an important reason why you are here today. So I want to invite everyone to take a moment and find someone who's sitting next to you or in front of you or behind you, someone that you don't know. Not the person you came in the car with, not the person you share a home with, someone you've never met before. And ask them why they're here today. And invite them to ask you why you're here today as well. So we're going to take a couple of minutes to allow you to make a new friend and a new comrade in arms in this fight about why we are here today. Take one more minute to continue sharing your stories. If you haven't exchanged speakers, now would be a good time to hear from the other person.
Wow, this is terrific. Just terrific.
I will invite you to bring your conversation to a close. Introduce yourself.
Oh,
You can
okay.
start, yeah.
Hello, I'm Susan Resnick Pierce, and I'm glad to be here. I think we're going to see lots of refrains in these stories today, but in my case, it was the late 1960s when I got a call from someone who was very, very close to me. She was 21 years old. She was alone in a cabin on Long Island Sound, having just had what we used to call a backstreet abortion by someone she was told by her boyfriend, who then disappeared, was a midwife, and she was now bleeding. The boyfriend was, suggested, was nowhere to be found. The midwife had left after completing what she called the procedure, and my friend was terrified. I was a graduate student at the University of Wisconsin with limited resources and absolutely had no knowledge whatsoever of what to do in this situation. My friend refused to go to an ER at a nearby hospital, close to where she was. She insisted she wanted to come back to Madison, which was home for her, and I tried really, really hard to persuade her to go to the emergency room, and she absolutely would not do so. So I bought her, in those days you could do it, I bought her a plane ticket by phone. She went to LaGuardia, the ticket was waiting, and she headed to Madison. I then frantically called my own gynecologist, who agreed to see her as soon as I could meet her plane and bring her to the office. He immediately, and I mean immediately, took her into surgery, later telling me that had she not had that surgery that quickly, she probably would have died, and she certainly would not have been able to have more children. Some years later, she had 2 healthy, wonderful kids, and she and I are still very close. A footnote, and I wish, Wendy, that we'd known you in those days, but I had a very close friend who lived in New York. She too was scheduled to have an abortion, but by now abortion was legal in New York State. She, however, didn't want to be alone. She didn't want her family to know, and it was a very loving family. I flew out to New York to be with her. The contrast was both startling and heartening. Because abortion was legal, the procedure was done in one of the top New York City hospitals. She was treated with great care and dignity, and she too went on to have more children. I'm appalled, as we all are, all these years later. We're now moving back to what was undoubtedly a very dark place for women and for those who loved them, a place that endangered their health and indeed, in many cases, their ability to have children. I'm really glad that we're coming together to try to remedy this. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I want to now invite up 2 people who put so much effort into making today happen and have a lot more work to do. Heather and Susan, the 2 of you put so much energy into building today's program, so please, you have much to share with us about how we're actually going to get this passed next November.
It is amazing to see a full chapel. Thank you for being here. So as many of you saw when you came in, we have tables out front with petitions. And we are hoping that you will all fill out a petition, take some for your friends, and hand them out. But now we want to give you a little bit of details so that they're actually counted and viable. So first, you may text or email or send the petition any electronic way that you would like. However, for them to be counted, they must be printed out, not a copy, not a scan, but the original turned in. So please do not fill out the petition and scan it back to us to print out. It has to be the one that is actually signed. When someone is filling out the petition, they need to make sure they're using the information that they are registered to vote with, so the name and the address of where they're registered. I just moved yesterday, and it dawned on me today, I've already changed my voter registration. I have to fill out a new petition now. So I didn't think about it either until today. You need to use blue or black ink, and you need to make sure it's legible, and both your birth date and the date that you're signing is written on the petition. You do not have to have your voter registration number if your birth date is on the petition. Please, this is one big thing. Spell out your county. Do not write PB for Palm Beach. They're getting very fickle about what they're going to accept, and we want to give them no reason to throw away our petitions. Unlike a ballot, a petition is a lot harder to cure, so we cannot necessarily find you to get you to write and fill out a new one. So you will think that you did it correctly, and it will go in the garbage. So please make sure also when you're helping your friends to find all those little pieces. When you are done and you have these hard copies, or you know friends that have hard copies, collect them and bring them to Temple Bethel. We will get them to the hub where they need to be turned in weekly to make sure that they are counted. They can be turned to this campus, the Schaefer Family Campus, or the Beck Family Campus on Yamato and 441 during our business hours, which are all on the website.
Speaking of the website, what we have done on our temple website is we've created a resource page. So if you can't remember anything that we're saying today, you can just go to this page, tbeboca.org/reproductive-freedom. We'll be emailing that to everybody tomorrow. On that resource page is all the instructions that Heather just shared about the petitions, the actual petition that you can click and download and email to your friends around the entire state of Florida, the addresses of both campuses that you can drop it off or mail it, as well as a link where you can volunteer. And this is where we could really use your help. We have two major initiatives that we're trying to do besides collect all the petitions that we can. One, you can volunteer at temple events to sit at a table just like we have out here and encourage people to sign petitions and make sure that they're filled out properly before we collect them. Second opportunity to volunteer is we're trying to collect enough petitions that we need a weekly driver up to the Planned Parenthood office in Palm Beach, which is currently the closest hub that's collecting these petitions and sending them where they need to go in Tallahassee. So as I said, tbeboca.org/reproductive-freedom, or we will email you that link, all the rest of the information that you need, as well as Heather's and my contact information. And Tracy has a question.
I do have a question. If I have friends who live outside of Palm Beach County and they fill it out, can I still bring them here?
Please, yes. Oh, the question was, if you have friends who live in other counties other than Palm Beach and you get the signed petitions, can you still bring them here? And the answer is yes. We will figure out the right place to send them. Tina? I'm sorry, what? Oh, it has to be brought here within, no, it has to be brought to the hub within 30 days. So it has to be immediate. Let's just put it that way. That's why we're doing a weekly drive up to Palm Beach. 1 million from throughout the state, right, Tina? And it has to be proportionate according 11 congressional districts. Tina Polsky is here today, by the way, our representative. Senator, sorry. Oh, so many questions right there.
Right. So there is a website. It tells us exactly how much money, some is cents and some are dollars for each county of how much we pay for each petition. We are going through, which is why we're saying to bring us your petitions. We're trying to make it within a week turnaround. We are going through every petition. If there is something missing or it's illegible, if it's torn or crumply or whatever, we are going to try to look you up. In a very nice way. We are going to try to find you and let you know that we weren't able to count your petition and to do another one. We are not going to send it on if it doesn't work out. We'll figure out the legalities of that, but we want to try to find people to correct them if possible.
So that's an important point. There is an urgency to getting the petition signed and brought back to us. Marla? You have to be registered to vote in Florida. You have to be a registered voter. Evelyn?
Yes.
Yeah. In the Sisterhood gift shop, they'll be available as well.
Yes.
I got it from another organization, and I made copies.
The petition's the same.
I was told, and I don't know if this is true, when you mail it in, I highlighted mail it in, you have to have each one in a separate envelope. Is that not true?
There's a cover sheet that is supposed to go in when it's mailed in, which is why it's easy if you wanted to send it to us. We can do the cover sheet for you, and we can make it all happen. We have the cover sheet. I know you sent it out without. I understand.
Jan, did you?
But I think everything I've seen, we can send it out. We are going to be outside afterwards answering any more questions that you might have, but in advance, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, sorry, we can answer questions afterward. We'll be out at the tables and collecting as many petitions as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Susan. They have put so much work into building today. Some of you came here this morning having already signed the petition. Many of you signed the petition before the program began. Many of you, we said, please wait till afterwards. When this comes to a conclusion in the next 15, 20 minutes or so, those tables and the petitions and the pens and the team isn't going anywhere until everyone who's here today has submitted a petition to be sent into the state. You will have all the time you need to make sure that's done. For those of you who are online with us, you can print the petition out, you can make copies of the blank petitions, and you can bring the original signed copies of those to either campus, and we will make sure it gets where it needs to be as quickly as possible to make sure that it gets counted. I want to introduce our next speaker today, who is the Temple's Executive Vice President, Gina Sugar, to offer her own story.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I would have loved to hear more answers to questions, too. But I wrote this whole great thing, but I'm not going to use it because, and ChatGPT helped me also, because I just want to speak from the heart, because what happened to me was how it should be, and how up to 5% of our population have it happen to them. So for me, in the early 2000s, I was newly married, trying to get pregnant for months, finally got pregnant, told all the people I was pregnant, and then, of course, went for my second visit to my OB, and there was no heartbeat. So that was a crushing loss, so I then told all the people that it wasn't pregnant, but so as a result, my OB said, why don't we wait a couple weeks? That wasn't happy for me to wait a couple weeks to allow it to naturally pass. It never naturally passed, so I went in and got a DNC. We're not sure under the current laws whether most OBs would allow that under the circumstances right now, and probably not. As a result, I was able to get pregnant a few months later because I'm healthy, normal, medical care. The same exact thing happened to me again, but that time it was twins, so that wasn't great. But that's the way it should be, and that's what we're fighting for. And as a result, I have 3 healthy, amazing children, and one of them is right here, and I love you so much. And I just want to say how much I adore this temple for doing this and for speaking out, and for RAC, NCJW, ACLU, Rabbi Greg are insanely great people. So thank you, and I'm just so proud to be part of you.
We have been hearing stories of bravery this morning of women who've experienced pregnancy and challenges and helping those who are in need. I want to bring some up now who demonstrated bravery in a different way, who spoke truth to power in ways that was inspiring to me. I want to introduce 16-year-old Maddie Barenboim.
Hi, I'm Madeline Barenboim, and we are here to talk. We are here to talk about justice and the importance of women's reproductive rights. Now, why would a 16-year-old girl be qualified to talk about these kinds of issues? Women's reproductive rights affect every and all women, more specifically those of reproductive age. I have several friends who have gone through teen pregnancy and have had children in high school due to the lack of accessibility to contraceptives and proper education on these topics. It is one of my passions to be able to shed light upon these social justice issues and to use my own voice to try to make a change for the better. Thanks to this temple, I got the opportunity to go on the Litaken trip with Rabbi Greg and a few other students for RAC. Litaken is a reform movement program for high schoolers all over the country. We spend a long weekend in Washington, D.C., learning about different social justice issues, and why they're important in Judaism, and how to write a speech to lobby about these issues to our own representatives, not only based on our personal beliefs and evidence, but also about the principles, values, and lessons that are taught in Judaism. On the last day, all of us go to visit the offices of our senators and representatives on Capitol Hill to share our ideas about social justice issues as constituents and ask for attention to be brought upon them. 2 other girls and I wrote speeches together about the importance of women's reproductive rights, which we shared in Senator Rick Scott's office. Senator Scott is known to oppose reproductive rights. When we went into his office, we met with 2 of the people that work in his office, including an older man who was his national security advisor. The 3 of us read through our speeches, making our points, giving evidence, giving personal stories, and stating the importance of these issues, not only to ourselves, but to our Jewish beliefs. As soon as we finished speaking, this man decided to voice his opinions and cause a scene. He said, and I quote, "I feel attacked," referring to a speech given by 3 teenage girls about our personal rights to our bodily autonomy. Before any of the rabbis could even jump in, I replied that we were only expressing our opinions and concerns on an issue that we believe in and that directly affects our everyday lives. He proceeded to argue and debate with me, going back and forth for about 5 to 10 minutes. He demanded that I give an oppositional viewpoint, which I did and disproved, and I continued giving facts and evidence about different types of situations and medical reasons for an abortion, ectopic pregnancies, incomplete miscarriages, and sickness in both the mother and the fetus. All of these complications result in a requirement of termination for the mother to live. I talked about the sexual assault rate in the US being 1 in every 6 women. I talked about women being unfit in mental health, financial stability, and physical health or stability, and so much more. His only argument and justification was that he had an Orthodox Jewish friend who didn't believe in abortion. He wouldn't believe that Judaism said women are entitled and even morally obligated to the termination of a pregnancy if the mother's well-being is at risk: mental, physical, financial, emotional, any and all well-being. He tried to argue with the 3 rabbis who were in the room about what our Torah says and dictates. Finally, he asked me what specific limitations would be included in a bill and what the bill might look like. To me, a 16-year-old high schooler. I looked up in the eyes and I said, "Sir, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legislator, but I have a uterus." Excuse my language, but that shut him up pretty quickly. What I've learned is that no matter how small a difference you may think you make, it still makes a difference. Use your voice. You have it for a reason. We are part of an incredible movement and community that gives us these opportunities and platforms to make a difference in this world for the better. We as women are the ones that are directly affected by this. Our mothers, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, on and on have used their voices to get us where we are today. We need to continue to use our voices to make this world better and more just for our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. Women's reproductive rights are not a political issue. They are not a moral dilemma to be discussed and debated. They are not something to be discussed by male politicians who do not understand women's bodies. They are a medical issue, a personal choice to be made by every woman individually. I only have one regret from my time in the senator's office. I wish that I had asked that man why his religious beliefs are more important than mine and why they affect political issues when we have separation of church and state. Why do male politicians have more autonomy over my body than I do?
Maddie's mom is in the 3rd row kvelling right now, as she should be. I was in that room with Maddie and with the team in Senator Scott's office, and it was so powerful. And I was so proud of you, Maddie, to see what you did, to see how you stood up for yourself, for our community, for our people, and for our tradition. And you didn't talk about the color of red that man's face turned when he realized that he was beaten in a debate by a 16-year-old. Congratulations, and thank you again. Let's hear it again for Maddie. That experience that we had this past January in Washington highlights one of the things that has me most concerned, which is that we as Jews are a religious minority in this country. And one of the things that has me worried is that this opportunity that a group of people have taken to exert their religious beliefs on the entire state and on the entire country puts us in a really precarious position, not only around abortion access and reproductive rights, which is so important, but in a variety of other concerns where we as Jews may be made to be and feel other by those in a majoritarian place. And so it's for that reason that Jews around the state of Florida have come together, working with Reformed congregations and the Religious Action Center of Reformed Judaism and Iraq, Florida, to create a network of folks just like us in congregations just like this one to do what we can to make this effort be successful. It's important that we get petitions from Palm Beach County and Miami-Dade County and Broward County, but as we heard earlier, we need petitions from around the state. And so our congregational partners on the West Coast in Naples and in Sarasota and in Jacksonville and in Tampa and in Orlando are also working together on this so we can get a really wide breadth of Reformed Jews raising their voice and signing these petitions to bring this to fruition. And so I want to introduce now the two women from our congregation who are working as the nexus of our relationship with RAC Florida. I want to introduce Jan Fine and Joanna Sackle, who also were integral in putting today together, to talk about how our work is going to feed into the larger statewide project.
Bringing this way down. All right, well, Maddie is a tough act to follow. But high school students like Maddie give us hope for the future. The program that Maddie attended is Litaken, which means to repair, as in Tikkun Olam. Litaken is a program of the Religious Action Center, or the RAC, a division of the URJ. The RAC was founded in 1961 thanks to a donation from Kiwi Kaplan, who was also the NAACP president. When Kiwi was on his honeymoon in Florida, he was turned away at a country club with a sign that said, "No Jews, no dogs." The event propelled Kiwi and many other Jews to serve at the forefront of the fight to end racial segregation. Many of the leaders of the URJ were arrested with MLK in St. Augustine, Florida in 1964 after a challenge to racial segregation in public accommodations. Furthermore, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was drafted in the RAC's own conference room in Washington, D.C.
Our fight here today for reproductive freedom is part of the RAC's commitment to social justice. While this morning's event at Temple Bethel is incredible, a testament to our incomparable clergy, staff, and lay leadership, we are not in this alone. In order for reproductive freedom to appear on the ballot in 2024, we need 1 million signatures. Let me repeat that. 1 million signatures. That's a lot. Thus, the TBE community must work with synagogues across the state and within a larger coalition to accomplish this goal. The partnership that RAC Florida forged with Floridians Protecting Freedom, Planned Parenthood, and the ACLU is what brought this initiative to Temple Bethel. Joanna and I are working with RAC Florida and a team of Reformed congregations across the state of Florida. Time and again, TBE Temple Bethel has proven itself to be a leader on social justice issues in the state. In order for freedom, reproductive freedom, to appear on the ballot, we need signatures from at least 14 of the state's 28 congressional districts.
So I'm going to go off book a little bit. I just wanted to say, as a TBE member, I am just so inspired and invigorated by everybody in this room and your commitment to being here, and by our incredible clergy and Susan and Heather, what they have put together while Heather's moving, while Susan's daughter is getting engaged. We are just The commitment that this synagogue has to this work and the level of professionalism is just, it's remarkable. I mean, it's just, there's no other way to say it. So I think everyone gets a round of applause. So, and the bravery that it takes to be a voice on this issue in the state, where this is not always something that people want to talk about and that everyone in the room is comfortable with. The clergy has taken such a leadership role in this and in articulating this to the press, to state legislators. It's amazing. So I'm so proud to be a member of this synagogue and to work with you all. But while we have immense pride in this TBE community, Temple Bethel, we need to invite you to sign up for the Religious Action Center launch on Thursday, June 13th, to take our activism, Tuesday the 13th, to take our activism to the state level. Don't worry, in the very beautiful, comprehensive email that will be sent out after this event, the link will be included in there, in that email. I was brought into this work by a passionate friend from another synagogue, I think she's here, who encouraged me to cancel class. I'm a professor at Lynn, to attend a meeting about RAC's fight for reproductive freedom in the state. This is the only way that we can build a statewide movement, if we all prioritize the importance of this issue and show up. And that means canceling things, rearranging things, and making this a priority. Just as in the 60s, when Jews were at the forefront of the fight for civil rights, we need to work together, both as a Jewish community and across communities, to drive this movement forward. Jewish activism at the state level has been critical in similar ballot initiatives across the country. In Michigan, Kansas, and currently in Ohio, where we are, Jan and I are working with our RAC partners in Ohio, where they also currently have a ballot initiative that they're propelling. We need all of you and your friends to join us on Tuesday, June 13th, and there you will learn how this will be accomplished.
And here it comes. Here it comes. Ballot initiatives cost millions. We must ask for funds to support this initiative and to support RAC Florida itself. For those of you who have friends or family outside of the state that want to join us in our efforts, this is a great way to get involved. As we said many times so far, in that email, a donation link will be available. We've set up tables in the lobby so you can sign the petition today. Some of you have already done so, and we encourage you to stay as long as you need to for that. Joanna and I and Heather and Susan and Greg will all be out there to take questions, and we thank you all for being with us today. And remember, this is the first step in the process, and it's a big one. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here with us.
I know many of you may have some questions, and we're going to have a few moments for questions in just a minute. I do want to add one other word of advice as we go forward from today. Because even though we have all signed a petition, it's only about 200 petitions that will get signed. Many of us have friends who live in Florida, who are registered and vote in Florida, and who by June are no longer in Florida. They can sign the petition. They can be sent the link. They can mail the signed petition here to Temple Bethel, and we will make sure it gets delivered to the offices where it needs to be. So if you know people who are registered to vote in Florida but are no longer in Florida, you can get them a copy of the petition, and they can mail it here at the synagogue. We're going to take a few moments now for questions. I want to invite Heather and Susan back up because you may be able to answer them, or Jan or Joanna. Ross has a microphone going around. If you have a question, raise your hand. We want to get the questions on the mic so the folks who are watching on the live stream can hear the questions as well.
What date will they be accepting the signed petitions up until?
December 31st.
Into the microphone.
December 31st.
The question was, when will they be accepting the ballots to come in?
So we would want them by December 15th, so we have time at least to get them in, but that would probably be the last date. If that changes, we'll put it on the website.
But don't wait. Do it tomorrow.
I have two granddaughters who are able to vote in New York, and I wonder, even though that's a liberal state so far, What can they do? Because I'm going home to tell them about that wonderful girl who spoke. She was so inspirational. I like to think that my granddaughters are like that, and so I want to pass it on forward.
I would always say to help them be active by going to programs like Litaken, to be active in their college campuses or wherever they are. That's the best thing you can do for now. And hopefully someday maybe they will want to also donate to causes that help in other states.
For folks outside of Florida, the best thing they can do is donate to the efforts, because it's going to cost a lot of money to get these ballots through. So if you're not in Florida and you want to help, make a donation to RAC Florida or to the effort to bring this to fruition.
I'd also add, tell them to use their social media, which I'm sure they are on.
Yeah. But not Snapchat, because it goes away.
Because this particular initiative is more political based, just for people's reference, will this be a tax deductible donation, or does it have to be written out so people know that what they're dealing with?
Donations to RAC Florida are tax deductible.
Thank
the
you.
RAC, the URJ, Temple Beth El are all 501c3 organizations. And I should say, just real quick, getting involved in issue politics, getting involved in advancing a ballot initiative is a nonpartisan effort, and therefore is tax deductible, and I'll use our word, is kosher for a synagogue to be doing.
Rabbi, I'm not a member of this congregation, and I'm not a Reformed Jew. I'm a conservative Jew.
We love you anyway.
Thank you. But what I'd like to ask you is something that Maddie raised, and she raised it when she saw the representative from Senator Rick Scott, and it has to do with the question about how the Orthodox view abortion.
Yep.
And how does the mix between Orthodox, conservative, and Reform deal with abortion? When in my congregation, and I was the president of my congregation in New York for 3 years, in my congregation, my rabbi never wanted to speak about it.
Right.
It was like a taboo issue.
So I think your question really has two answers to it. One is, what do the various movements' understandings and interpretations of the tradition say? And then what are leaders comfortable talking about? So as Rabbi Rabashaw mentioned in her presentation, even within Orthodoxy, there are leading voices and leading Jewish legal scholars who say that access to abortion is essential. I also know that, especially in the last couple of years when the Dobbs decision came down last year, that the leadership of the conservative movement, both the synagogue arm and the rabbinic arm, came out against the restriction of abortion access that has come to pass. And the Reform movement has always been more comfortable speaking out on issues like this, and as Joanna talked about, going back to the founding of the RAC in the 1950s and 1960s. So, if you talk to most conservative rabbis, they will tell you that they are very, very supportive of this effort. And they may be less comfortable getting engaged on this particular issue. I will share that I've been speaking with my conservative colleagues in town to see what we might be able to do to help them. But this effort is not limited to Reform Jews, Temple Beth El, or Jews. Anyone and everyone can get involved, and if the comfortable place for you to do that is through Temple Beth El, we are more than happy to help make that happen.
I want to add one more thing to that, which is that at the RAC launch on June 13th, Tuesday, June 13th, we have more than 21 congregations participating across the state. And beyond that, we have Chabads. There are at least 2 Chabads, and there are several other non-Jewish organizations who are joining us. The doors are open. We want to work with everybody.
And then just one more thing to add, that everyone is invited in the tent. This is not a Jewish issue. This is our point of intersection at Temple Beth El, but the RAC launch on Tuesday, June 13th, via Zoom, is for everyone. Everyone is invited, and we encourage you to bring 3 friends, and Jews, non-Jews, preferably registered Florida voters, to the launch so that you can learn more about how this is a movement. This isn't just about those of us in this room. This is a movement.
Where's the launch taking place?
Zoom.
It's on Zoom. You can do it from home on your couch. It's a Zoom, the launch is a Zoom event on the night of June 13th.
I'm leaving the state next Saturday, and I'm going
Okay.
to be gone till the end of June.
Okay.
Is there time for me to be involved between now and the time I come, leave? And when I come back, will there still be activities that I can participate in?
There's plenty to do. Again, at the core of all this, the most important thing is that we get a signed petition from over 1 million Floridians. So wherever you are, where you know there are Floridians, and who are registered to vote, you can get them a petition and we can get it turned in. We can talk to people, you can make phone calls, you can be on Zoom, you can donate money to the effort from wherever you are around the world to make this happen. We know a lot of you are going to be away for the summer. I'm going to be gone for a bit, but there is so much that you can do from home. Number one thing is to sign the petition. So as we break in just a couple of minutes, for those of you who haven't yet signed it, you can sign it in the lobby. If you have signed it, we're not from Chicago. I'm from Chicago. We're not from Chicago. You can't do it more than once. It's only one petition. It is actually a first-degree misdemeanor to knowingly sign more than one of these petitions. I don't want anyone to go to jail for that reason. We can go to jail together for other reasons, but not for that reason.
What is the current status of, I know there's at least one lawsuit that was brought indicating that this law, the Dobbs law, is in violation of protection of religious freedom for Jews. It was brought by a synagogue. Do you know of others, and do you know what the status of that case is?
The status is they're not moving fast enough for my satisfaction. And so this is a way to short-circuit that entire effort and make sure that come November of 2020, ensconced in an amendment to the Florida Constitution is the statement that access to abortion is required in the state of Florida. Turn it off.
Truly challenged. I just wanted to say I've been having people sign the petition, and I can't tell you how many times I've had to say to the people, you know, your husband can sign this.
Mm-hmm. Husbands, sons, brothers, grandsons,
they can
anyone.
all sign it.
Of registered age.
Well, you know, if of registered age, because the women will sign it, but the men stand there. Sorry, men. I don't mean it as a judgment.
No, we deserve it.
You know, it's a woman's problem. No, it's not.
We have time for one final question.
Yeah, quick question. Isn't there a group called Floridians Protecting Freedom that's
Yes.
kind of above and beyond? Can you speak a bit about that, that this is way beyond the rack as well? Thank you.
No. So Floridians Protecting Freedom is the umbrella organization that is guiding this entire effort. They are the ones who work to get the language of the petition on the, get the petition going. So the RAC Florida, and therefore the Reformed congregations around the state, are working in partnership with Floridians Protecting Freedom. So what's happening is the petitions that we collect will be delivered to one of the Floridians Protecting Freedom hubs in West Palm Beach. They are the ones guiding the statewide effort, but as a synagogue, and as a synagogue that has the network with RAC Florida, we have a particular resource, which is all of us. We have a network of folks with whom we can easily share information, hold each other accountable, and do what we can to bring this together. So the simple answer is we are all pulling water in the same direction to bring this to fruition. Thank you so much for asking that question. I promised we would be done by noon. We did it. It is noon. So that's going to bring our program here in the chapel to conclusion. I want to thank Jan and Joanna and Heather and Susan and all of our phenomenal speakers. I want to thank Ross and Jason and Rob Butler who are working us on the tech side to make sure this happened. I want to thank our maintenance guys, and I want to make sure that no one leaves this building having not yet signed the petition. The tables are open, the pens are there. We will do what we can to make sure it is perfect and ready to go. Thank you so much.